Today I'd like to talk to you about our relationship journey. It's very important to see your marriage relationship as a journey toward the fulfilling of your destiny as a couple. We know that 50% of marriages fail. Straight across the board, they fail. We know that only 10% of those that succeed report having a satisfactory relationship. I want you to know today that there are at least 4 very predictable stages that marriages go through. First of all, there's the romantic stage, and that's when everything happens to cause us to fall in love. We meet the right person. The chemicals and hormones that are produced that make us fall madly in love with this person. And there's a reason for that, because back in the back part of our brain stem and then the limbic system, there is an unconscious agenda that's going on, an unconscious relationship agenda. Because back there in that part of your brain, you have this image of your caretakers. There's a composite image of both positive and negative traits. And the reason for that is because your memories are stored there, the pains of childhood, the wounds, the disappointments, the unmet needs you had as a child, also all the wonderful, pleasurable experiences you had growing up. So all of those experiences are connected with emotions back there in this limbic system, a part of your brain. The thing that's important to know about this part of your brain is that it is always in an eternal state of now. So what you experienced back then in terms of pleasure and in terms of pain is still there, resident in this part of your brain. And those memories, the painful ones and the pleasurable ones, are attached to this image of the caretakers that you had. And so with that in mind, when you meet a person that unconsciously matches that image, you'll see the positive aspects and you'll be drawn to them because of the match. However, those drugs that are released in your system that make you fall madly in love will not be released unless that person matches some of those negative traits. Wow. This is all going on unconsciously and you don't realize it. That's why after the drugs wear off, and after you realize, wow, I've married a person very similar to my caretakers. Sometimes you hear it said, I married my mom, I married my dad. You didn't marry your mom, you didn't marry your dad, but what you did is you were keyed into an image that matched up with those same qualities, those same traits. And when that happens, and all the drugs wear off, we go into the power struggle stage of the relationship. And that's where couples not understanding it, they wake up thinking, I married the wrong person. This dream that I had is now turned into a nightmare. And so we get into the power struggle stage. It's important to know that that stage is normal. In most relationships, you go through that. So what's important, as you look at the slide there, is that at this time when you recognize that you're going through the power struggle, it's important to make another commitment. I know you made a commitment when you said, I do, there at the altar, before God and before your friends. You said, I do. You made a commitment for life. However, when you get to the power struggle stage, it's important that you make another commitment, and that is to get through this stage, because it's at this point in the power struggle stage that 50% of marriages, most of them that fail at this point. And so what I want to encourage you to do is no matter how bad your marriage seems to be, no matter how much in conflict you are, let me encourage you to make a commitment to reconnecting, rekindling, and re-envisioning your relationship. And if you'll make a commitment to that, you can then move through the power struggle stage to the mature love stage. And the mature love stage is where you have now learned that you married this person with an agenda. And that agenda was to have your wholeness restored. That agenda was to have the childhood wounds that were inflicted and that happened just along the way to be healed. That agenda was to have some of those unmet needs you had as a child met, because you perceived that this person would be able to do it because they carry within them the traits that will activate your pain at the deepest level. So when you learn that, you become conscious of that, you move into what we call a conscious marriage, where it becomes a partnership, where your partner and you are working together for mutual healing and growth. Every time a partner has a need for healing and some kind of a pain is activated in them, you see, when that pain is activated, they then become defensive. And those defense mechanisms that they learned in childhood are very significant because they're very powerful. They're not packing just the infliction of the offense at the present, but it's packing what we call the 90% of the reaction that comes from history, comes from the past. There is what's called the 90-10 principle in psychology. And what that means is that 90% of what you experience in terms of upset, in terms of anger, in terms of fear responses, in terms of your reaction to something, 90% of that is related to history. 10% of it is related to present. And the way that it's illustrated is that if you were to come and tap me on the shoulder, let's say I'm doing this video and you had a question and you came and you tapped me on the shoulder, and let's say you did that, and I turned around and I was so angry at you, I was so reactive at you, you thought maybe, oh my, he's going to punch me. And you don't know why I'm reactive, and I may not know either. But if you were to look underneath my shirt, at my shoulder, what you would see is a gaping wound. What you would see is a bruise, black and blue bruise all over my shoulder. And what you didn't know is that when you tapped that, you were not the source of my pain. You were only the trigger. The source was related to something that happened previously. And in relationships, that's exactly what we do. When we it seems like we overreact to things. We go into our defensive modes. And what we are doing is we are going into the defensive modes that we learned in childhood. And for some of you, that defensive mode may be to explode outwardly with your anger. And that is what we call a maximizer, or we use the hailstorm to illustrate that. You become a hailstorm. And that's the way you grew up. You weren't going to get your needs met unless you exploded outwardly and insisted and intruded and demanded that. You didn't get your needs met. But then as another mechanism for defense growing up, some of you had to do the opposite to survive. Anger wasn't allowed in your home. You could not explode outwardly. You had to just tuck it and go and suppress your anger and move out. And it wasn't appropriate to explode outwardly. So what happened is you learned how to be a minimizer. We use a turtle to illustrate that. So because when the hailstorm comes, what does the turtle do? He pulls in his shell, he hides, he disconnects, and that's the way he survived his childhood. Now, what you did for childhood is great because it helped you survive whatever was going on. But I'm here to tell you today that that kind of strategy will not work in your marriage. You need to learn a different way of communicating in your marriage. And it's these defensive mechanisms that I said come from the 90% of pain from our past that sabotage our relationships. It's these defensive mechanisms that cause injury and wounding to our partners. And so once you get into that cycle of defensiveness and blame and defensiveness and blame, nobody's listening to anybody, and you're fully engulfed in the power struggle stage. That's when you need to make a commitment to become conscious of what's going on. And once you and your partner realize that you're in this defensive mode and you're realizing that hey, I'm not really responsible for the 90%. I have just become a trigger for her in her pain to be expressed, or her anger, or her fear, whatever that may be. And when you learn that, then you kind of get yourself off the hook, and you can become conscious that there's a lot more going on than what you've done, and then you become your partner's partner in healing, and you help them heal. Now, what happens when we go through the counseling process, we become aware of this, and we learn a new way of communicating where it becomes safe. We learn a new way of communicating where couples can talk and share their feelings in a way that those feelings are valued. Even if I don't agree with them, I value my partner's feelings. And when that happens, it creates a safety zone where you can then become reconnected. If there's no safety, if every time I say something you're reacting or you're defensive or you're blaming or you're taking offense at it, that's not going to work. It's going to cause you to shut communications down. So we use a process that I call the appointment, and it's basically the Imago dialogue process, where we help couples understand the powerful emotions that are behind the offensive words. And so as couples then learn to reconnect, and then we also provide exercises for them to rekindle the relationship, so that even though you may think in this power struggle, my feelings are dead, I have no more feelings of love for this person, those feelings, every one of them, can be rekindled. And you do that through certain exercises that we do that speak love to your partner. And when you do that, something happens in your brain, and it causes the chemicals to actually be reintroduced into your system, and you fall in love again. And so there is a rekindling process. And then as that goes forward, you learn to communicate by validating each other's feelings, by empathizing, ultimately getting to the place of empathy and connection. And then as there's a safety zone, then you begin to request changes. When you make a change request, it's telling your partner what you need. It's telling your partner how, if you would just do this certain thing instead of retreating to the garage like or into your shell like a turtle, what I need you to do is stay present with me. And if you'll do that, that'll bring healing. And it will, and it does. And it also brings growth to your partner, because your partner will have to stretch and grow in order to do that, because he or she is not accustomed to doing that. They're accustomed to doing the opposite. And so for the hailstorm, when the hailstorm is always intruding and always overbearing and always exploding outwardly with their anger, when the request from the turtle comes to, would you kind of help me by dialing it back and making it a little safer for me to stick my head out? And when you do that, that brings healing to your partner, because that's what your partner has been looking for, is someone that when that childhood pain is activated, someone like their caretakers has activated it, but they're responding in a different way that's bringing healing. And that will cause you, as a hailstorm, it'll cause you to grow. It'll cause you to dial it back. And the reality is that most of these reactions are caused because of the anxiety that happens when we're disconnected. When we're disconnected, there's anxiety, all our childhood defenses come up, and nothing works in the relationship. So how critical it is on this journey to recognize, yes, I fell in love with the right person. If I'm in the power struggle stage and I'm feeling like I don't think I married the right person, I think I married the wrong person, this is not a dream, this is a nightmare, then that's a sign that you actually married the right person. In the power struggle stage, if you come through and you make that commitment to reconnecting, rekindling, and now re-envisioning your relationship, you get to the third stage, which I call the mature love stage. And what is the mature love stage? It becomes a partnership for healing and growth, as I described. Now, once you're in that kind of a mode, what I find my clients, when they get to this place, they're so invigorated, they're so rejuvenated, they're so renewed in their life that they then start asking, what can we do to make the world a better place together? So after you reach the mature love stage, it's very natural then to move into the final stage, which I call the world impact stage. And that's the stage where you, as a partnership, you are fulfilling your destiny according to who you are as individuals and as a couple. According to your identity, you are fulfilling your destiny to make the world a better place. So let me encourage you to get on the journey, a couple's journey toward healing, wholeness, and transformation.